army.
It was while in the army that the athletic Idi Amin enjoyed his first taste of fame. He was Uganda's first heavyweight champion for more than 9 years and remained the king swimmer throughout his life. Just as impressive was his appetite for women. Polygamy is legal in Uganda, and he had at least 5 wives, countless girlfriends, and is known to have fathered more than 40 children. They lived as an extended family in the State House in the Ugandan capital, Kampala.
It was fun with my dad. All the time it was fun. Though he was also a very down-to-earth person who wanted to make sure that we are not spoiled kids. In school, he made sure we were treated just the same as all the other kids.
Although celebrations had greeted Amin's coup, a year later, there was a challenge to his leadership. Milton Obote had now fled to neighboring Tanzania, where a number of his supporters had joined him. In early 1972, word reached Idi Amin that they were on the move.
The Tanzanian troops are preparing with the modern Chinese arms requested by Dr. Apollo Milton Obote to come and attack Uganda. This is the message which I received this morning.
Though the attempt was crushed, Amin now harbored a growing concern that Obote will once again try to regain power. By now, his lack of education and political inexperience are also becoming all too apparent.
Just didn't have the capacity. He didn't know how to do it because he did not understand what they were doing. He did not understand the budget for a country. He had no idea what that was about. Foreign affairs, you know. It really was the lack of education. He was doing the best he could from his point of view. And that was not the best from other people's point of view.
In 1972, Amin, a self-proclaimed nationalist, unveiled plans for an economic war on what he called domination of Ugandans by foreigners.
This is the paper, August 17, all Asians must go.
Dali Ijoma's parents were among 80,000 Asians then living in Uganda. Amin ordered them to get out. At that time, Asians made up just 1% of the population, but controlled 2/3 of the non-food economy.
Of course, we had a very, very privileged life. It was a life in which the gap between Asians and Africans was immense.
The Asians, many of whom held British passports, were given 90 days to leave and allowed to take with them only what they could carry. Among many ordinary Ugandans, the move proved popular. There was widespread looting, and Amin handed over the Asians' properties business to his cronies.
He sent away the Asians, who were the backbone of the economy. And during that period, all the industries came to a halt, all the social services disintegrated, you know, the schools went rotten, so is the hospitals, so nothing was left for Uganda.
Of course, did us a favor in that the Ugandan entrepreneurs, the local entrepreneurs now came out because they chased the Asians, and most of the other foreigners also left. So business was now open for the Ugandans to take over. But they were not really ready for it at that point in time. If it was now, it would have been different. At that point in time, we were not ready. We were not business people.
Do we see him as a monster? Yeah, after a point, he was monstrous towards us also. He was very, very frightening to be near. He was frightening to be near.
Originally pro-West, Amin had by now swapped political allegiances and was now being backed by Libya's Colonel Gaddafi. He converted to the Muslim faith and declared Uganda an Islamic state and set aside land for Kampala Mosque that Gaddafi later financed. Meanwhile, he was wasting no chance to decry the country's former colonial masters, Britain.
It's a cocktail party at one of our major hotels, and Amin has arranged, one of his publicity stunts to get a group of British businessmen in Uganda to basically carry him shoulder high and declare him the conqueror of the British Empire. So this is Idi Amin trying to posture like, you colonize us, but now you carry me aloft. Now I'm basically your master. The tables have been turned.
The flamboyant Amin seemingly revolved in publicity. He is said to have been helped when the Central African Republic's president paid a visit and literally outshone him.
When Bokassa came here, the whole chest was full of medals, quite a heavy load for him. Amin also thought that was a good idea and also started the same.
Amin bestowed upon himself fake medals and titles. He declared himself Lord of all beasts of the heart and fishes of the sea, as well as the King of Scotland. Actions like this caused Amin to be portrayed as a buffon and a clown in the West. But back home, his regime was no laughing matter.
Our parents would hear them in their conversation talk about people disappearing, talk about people being killed. But we are young, we couldn't understand some of the things. But again, this was further compounded by what we also started witnessing in school, when some children will not turn up and just you hear either their parents have fled or their parents have disappeared.
You say there's no opposition to your rule in this country at the moment. Many people abroad would say that that is because most of your opponents have been removed or have fled.
No, I think you should not listen too much what exile are telling you. You shouldn't. If you want, you come direct to Uganda and get your representative in Kampala so that he can give you accurate information. But I wanted to ask you, are you not afraid of interviewing the conqueror of the British Empire as you are British? You are not afraid of...
Among the most notorious elements of Idi Amin's rule was the State Research Bureau.
The State Research Bureau is remembered for torture. They had their tortures of Kampala, and there they tortured and killed many people. It is said, from the accounts I've read, at the fall of Amin, the walls in the State Research Bureau head office were all blood-stained.
We are going to see Idi Amin's torture chambers now. They are quite touching. You might feel bad about it, of course, but the thing is, everybody has heard about Amin in life.
Today, Idi Amin's torture chamber are on the Kampala tourist trail.
So it also had another metallic sliding door outside, just here on the gate. Then just inside there, it also had metallic sliding doors on all sides. And then prisoners could also die of electrocution.
Thank you. The #1 site on our tour is Idi Amin's torture chambers. Of course, if I talk about torture chambers, you feel you're hearing something like darkness, dark past. But many people in the Western world and many people from many other countries have also been hearing a lot about Amin. So however bad it is, however touching it might be, still people want to see it and they find it interesting.
Just being in here with seeing how damp and dark and scary it is, it's definitely shocking to see what went on here. It makes me think that Idi Amin was just a brutal, sadistic dictator.
When you say dark side, I presume you're meaning all this murderous person and that. For me, murderous, if I look at a horror movie and I see the guy going with all, full of blood on him and all this kind of thing, and I'm like, but that wasn't my father. I never saw that kind of person. I remember an angry man over a particular issue happening. Yes, I've seen that. And even us, we would get scared. We'd get out of his way, something is wrong and he's angry about this and that. And that is the utmost of a dark person I've seen is someone getting angry.
Torture Little documentary evidence, however, testifies to the extent of the killings and torture that took place during Idi Amin's rule. Prominent people were among them, but there were also thousands of ordinary Ugandans. During regular patrol of the army, soldiers perceived to support Milton Obote were executed. Others were killed for their money, property, and women. Images like this were seen in Uganda at that time, but published in other parts of the world. They provoked outrage and fascination for the man who became known as the Butcher of Uganda.
Behind all of this was this general myth or rumor or perception that Amin had a mental problem. There's so many reports about he having supposedly contracted syphilis as a young man. So there was always this question of, is this madness? Is this his brutal nature? Is that syphilis? Is he normal? Is he crazy?
Amin's alleged interest in witchcraft and blood rites added to the intrigue.
His solutions were through witch doctors, and you can imagine the kind of message they must have been giving him.
Amin spoke quite casual about testing blood. It was not to me directly, but we were in cabinet meetings and was when anything that would give him a sense of bigness, and he would say it.
While Amin acted as he did remains a mystery, but there are also many theories.
The more he felt insecure, the more ruthless he became. The more he felt insecure, he would definitely want to do things that he wouldn't have done otherwise.
He did not have any idea of how to run a government. I pointed out that he was of humble education. He hadn't studied a lot. So that in itself, the inferiority complex, could have even made him to become brutal. Because how do you deal with people who are educated, yet you are not educated?
People say he was good in the beginning because they say with time he just started losing control over his army, and also he fell out with many people, and he started also being very desperate.
One death struck the very heart of Idi Amin's family. It was that of his third wife, Kay.
It is a very tragic event. I even personally have difficulty getting to grips with it. I remember her, she was a very bright person. She was a very loving mother. She not only to us, her children, but to also other children.
Kay's mutilated body was discovered in August 1974. She was aged around 30.
I hadn't known about the conflict she had been having with my father at the time.
The circumstances surrounding Kay's death remained a mystery. Perhaps, inevitably, Amin's notoriety led to the finger being pointed at him.
In my discussions with him on it, and honestly, I really made my peace with my father on the issue of my mother. Yeah, I made peace with him on that, and he's clean.
By the mid-1970s, there had been at least 2 attempts on his life, and it said he was obsessed by the threat of a counterattack by Milton Obote. Then in July 1976, came a humiliation that had been immortalized in books. In a daring aid, his commandos rescued hostages from a hijacked plane. Amin had allowed to land in Tebbi Airport. The hijackers were pro-Palestinian militants. The Israelis also killed their hijackers and destroyed a quarter of Uganda's fighter planes.
The raid of Entebbe exposed that Amin had no army. It was a weak regime. Amin had the ability to the world fear by talking. But in real sense, there was no army.
I can confirm that it was very devastating. After that raid, he never recovered his authority.
So what capability does your Air Force have now?
I can't tell you any secrecy because you might pass this information to South Africa, which I am actually aiming to destroy Johannesburg and Cape Town. This is my aim. I'm very serious about this.
By 1978, Ugandan soldiers were fleeing to neighboring Tanzania. Idi Amin sent in troops. Tanzania launched a counterattack, and in April 1979, Kampala fell.
If you catch Idi Amin, what are you going to do with it? We are going to eat his flesh. In fact, you want his head in Tanzania, his head. We'll put him in a museum if it's possible.
But Idi Amin was not captured. He fled first to Libya and then to Saudi Arabia. Here, he and his family members were given a home in Jeddah.
It was this retirement that he really needed.
In 1980, a BBC television crew tracked him down. In the meantime, his worst fears had been realized. His enemy, Milton Obote, had become Uganda's president once more.
Obote said last week, I heard him say it, he said that Idi Amin Dada should be brought back to Uganda in chains. That's what he said at that rally.
Yes, but he knows that I am very popular. Obote is against any leader popular in Uganda because he is unpopular.
Even in exile, Idi Amin remained in the limelight. 1981 saw the release of the first of the number of feature films based on his life.
I need at least $1 million for intelligence mission immediately.
The film, which portrayed the former president as a brutal tyrant, was a popular success in many parts of the world.
We're simply out of foreign currency. Well, print more.
A copy even reached Idi Amin himself in Jeddah. Idi Amin remained in exile until his death in August 2003. He was in his late 70s, being in a hospital for some time. Today, Uganda is one of the world's fastest growing economies. There are no monuments here to commemorate Idi Amin. There are no statues and no plaques. Yet, on the street of Kampala, his name is far from forgotten.
The bad thing about Idi Amin, he was a dictator and he didn't respect human rights.
Idi Amin was a man who loved his country. He was a patriotic leader.
Now every Ugandan is now beginning to remember him, to see as the best president ever this country will ever get.
He used to kill people, that man. Whoever could come against him, he would just kill.
He damaged Uganda's image. You know, so much so that even in some parts of the world where you go, when you tell them Uganda, they say, oh, that country of Idi Amin. Nearly the whole world got to know that there was a brutal dictator in Uganda.
Well, he made us famous for the wrong reasons. Everybody have been promoting investment for the last 11 years, and the only thing some people knew about Uganda, everybody I can say knew about Idi Amin.
Murder, mysterious deaths, an African tyrant standing up to Western powers, bodies being thrown down into the River Nile, the world's longest river. The whole cocktail just basically meant that Amin would become that unforgettable person.